So, some experiences and interests that I feel will be relevant to this course is, well, first of all, I feel like I am now a self identified abolitionist, or I would say I believe in abolitionist theory, perspectives, political movements that are happening. I have faith in them because, and this relates to experiences, I have been in a lot of institutions that also are often majority white middle class spaces, and majority cis spaces, majority straight spaces. Um, um, so basically, I have been experiencing, and also I like to call it observing, watching, seeing what's possible. And from that, I get into kind of heated conversations with my tutor about, you know, can we even create care in an institution? And she said, Joy, I think you should look into abolitionist theory, you know. And I said, okay. And it always just felt like this fancy word that I didn't really understand, and I related it to prisons because a lot of it has been formed from my understanding, from the an African American context of prisons and like prison reform, and just seeing that that is a recreation of slavery, etc. So basically, what I want to get to is the fact that um, I feel like an abolitionist. I feel like this course holds that, honors that in complexity, seems to look at the possibilities of burning it all down, but also like, what can we do now? What is realistic in terms of there are big urgencies right now, and to burn everything now will take a lot of labor, will take, you know, potential. It's dangerous. It can be dangerous. So what I like about this course and what I can perceive from it, looking at it, the overview, is that it feels like it gives me like could give me a teaching of what abolition potentially, or different forms of deconstructing stuff, but I do feel like there is an honoring of abolitionist perspectives, um, how it could be produced, and also what the pros and cons, how can we do this. So next we move on to what's my relationship with radical imagination, and some of the other questions following radical imagination. So for me, radical imagination is, I believe, it means to dream or to believe beyond what our minds already believe is possible. And from that, I believe it is inherently political. Because for me, say, if you look at the apartheid, for example, and my mom was South African, so that's really lies heavy in my heart and my life. But if you look at the apartheid, for example, during that time, before apartheid ended, people would have never really, it would have been very hard to perceive it ending without radical imagination, because it would have been radical to really believe something so ingrained in the existences of people, in the existences of Black and what was called colored people at that point in their lives. Even white people, I'm sure, you know, you wouldn't be able to perceive it ending, really, because it hadn't been seen as possible, hadn't happened yet. So to me, radical imagination is a tactic, is a mode of thinking that is expansive, and therefore can assist in destroying systemic oppression. It's a new world building method, I believe, and I think about how it moves beyond the rational. And I believe, like, if you look at a Western way of thinking, Western scientific way of thinking, it really centers materialism, where it's like, if you can't see it happen, it's not, if it's not right in front of you, it's not real, right? Like, why do we have the word paranormal? Because we suggest that things that happen, which, and paranormal activities are happening all the time, like morphic resonance. The theory of morphic resonance talks about how, like, why can we tell when somebody's looking at us when we're looking this way, like they're behind us, we can feel it, right? And a lot of us, most of us, can say that's happening, but scientists like call that paranormal in the West. But why is it not just normal? So what I guess I'm talking about here is, like, this Western rationality really goes against radical imagination. And so, you know, radical imagination is something that points to the supernatural, points to the many possibilities. And I believe that we need that. We need magic. I also, radical imagination makes me think of what I believe was like the best form of collective organizing I saw on film at a very young age, in the film Peter Pan, where there's this bit in the play where they say, you know, if people don't believe in fairies, then the fairies will die. And so there's this person on stage, actor on stage, says to the audience member, especially the children, right, say you believe in fairies, say I believe in fairies. And everybody starts saying it, and the kids start saying that, and then in this situation, in this room with all these people connected, suddenly everybody believes in fairies. And there's so many possibilities to that. It makes me think of how, if everybody was to really believe, if we were to really ignite that, one of the main things now that I think is such an issue and causing this apathy or this disempowerment, I call it a white apathy, like a white middle class apathy, like, no, you know, I don't know, we can't really, you know, it's not really a change. And then this disempowerment is experienced by a lot of marginalized people, where it's like, nothing's changing, like, how can we really do it? And we've seen it fail a lot. So I feel like radical imagination can really cut through that. It's like, how can we, you know, radically shift our mindsets and go to where there is no limit and work from that, because we already have so many limits in our heads because of political indoctrination, that we need a radical imagination to show us that, you know, start from there's no limit, right? The sky is the limit of bliss, of freedom, of emancipation, of us connecting to get to true freedom. You know, if we start from what's realistic, well, there's so much indoctrination in that. What's realistic? You know, what have we seen before? You know, well, we've never really seen true freedom amongst all of us before. So how can we really start to do true liberation without radical imagination? So now we move on to talk about Black liberation and what I believe is possible with Black liberation. So I guess as well, like I talked about, I like these questions because we're going, you know, what I talked about, how with being realistic, but also going beyond what we believe is possible or what we're told to believe could be possible. So I like this. What is possible? What's possible with Black liberation? Well, I think about what's already here. I think about how most, first I want to say with, you know, the new abortion laws in America, suddenly a lot of white cis middle class females saw how they could be harmed by the state, which I think was a shock. But for Black people, you know, and I talk about all Black people here, I'm including and centering as well Black trans people, Black working class people, Black low income people, Black queer people, Black women, etc., Black men, knew already, you know, that they're harmed by the state and that they can be harmed by the state. So I'm talking about this now because you asked me what I think is possible with Black liberation. I think one key thing that we have is that Black people have a knowing. We are the holders of truth in society, and so we have a knowing of, because of our political aspects, our political experience of the world, So we already know that the state is against us in many ways. With that, it's not like we need to do a lot of campaigning, right? Because we already know, most of us. To me, the main thing is collecting and bridging, because you have a lot of black cis community, black cis straight community, whose perception of black empowerment really it really doesn't include black trans and black queer initiatives. So to me, it's about bridging and showing, listen, we are actually stronger together, and actually your freedom is my freedom. And what I believe is possible from that bridging is collectivity. And through that collectivity is understanding that, again, because of diaspora, I'm thinking about things we already have as black people. We have a diasporic community as well as a community on the continent. So I believe with that collecting, bridging, that already knowledge of what is our enemy, the state I speak of here, means that we have all we need. It's just about bridging. And what I believe, and all these things I talked about, but what I believe is possible is healing, is our mindset shifting, and change. And I know that sounds a bit simple, and when I speak of change, and I'm speaking of political change, I know that sounds simple, but I think there's a lot in that. And I don't think I have enough time really to say what all of that means. But yes, I believe in those three things. That's what I believe is possible. But I've kind of centered on what I believe is possible in relation to what we already have, the powers we already have. So I hope that was clear. So in terms of indigenous spiritualities and my understanding of that, I really feel it centers on the fact that I identify as a healer. Through that, I am really interested in being trained in shamanism, and also shamanism as a political strategy, because I feel like a lot of the issues with the political is the centering of the 2D, of what we look like, what our skin tone is, and also how much in terms of gender, how much a person passes. And so that deep oppression, that means a person has to, transition physically, which is definitely a part of it and a part of somebody's transition. But the Western politics centers the 2D so much that it's very damaging, and it's what's led to intense transphobia, intense racism, etc., because of the obsession with the 2D. So I believe for us to truly politically be liberated, we need to heal beyond the 2D, and I believe shamanism is a potential solution for that, because it looks at other worlds, it looks at ancestors, it looks at I believe the 5D, it looks at wisdom that is beyond the 2D, wisdom that is expansive, it's not seen, soul healing, and I believe for us to truly liberate, we have to heal our minds and our souls. So yes, that is one aspect. Also in relation to my own divinity, so I believe divinity is innate, and it's all about us returning back to that understanding that we are divine by birth, by being, like the sun and the skies and the stars. So yeah, it's something I think I thought of this the other day, of how, like, I guess I do the the simple way that I try to honor that in people and to bring that about is I will always message my friends and community, chosen family, etc. Like, I'll refer to them as divine souls, you know, but just in specific moments, you know, you're a divine soul. Because I just like to offer that for people. Just not offer it, but just sort of like, you're not actually this human, like you are, but you are, in truth, you're a divine soul. I know that's quite an informal answer, but yeah.